This episode of Fuel for the Soul is powered by ASICS. Head over to asics.com and sign up for a one ASICS account. It's completely free, and when you sign up, you will receive 10% off your first purchase. You'll also gain access to exclusive colorways on asics.com, free standard shipping, special birthday month discounts, and more.
Hey, this is Thomas with Believe in the Run.
This is Megan with Believe in the Run.
And this is Megan with Featherstone Nutrition.
Dun, 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 aka Feathers.
And you're listening to Fuel for the Soul, the podcast where we talk all things hydration and nutrition and how it affects performance. And today, we're talking about a topic that you are jazzed about.
Creatine.
Say who? Is that a sneeze?
I believe it's pronounced creatine.
Maybe where you're from. I'm hanging out at the gym all the time, and we shorten it up to the teen.
The other day, Thomas just decided that he was going to abbreviate like every single word.
And you understood me.
And it was outrageous.
But she followed.
Yeah, but I wish I could remember some of them.
The one I got stuck on was success.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's either suck or cess. And neither one sounds great when you're talking about success.
Changes the context of the entire. Well, you're not the only one excited to talk about creatine. I think I have had people banging down the Instagram DMs for 6 months now, maybe longer. And to be completely honest, there's so much research on creatine, very little research on endurance athletes. And I just didn't have the time to dive into it to really do a thorough look until recently. So here we are.
Do you feel like it's...
Go ahead.
Do you think it's having a rebirth? Like, I feel like creatine's been around for 20, 30 years. I remember baseball players were real big into it. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing steroids. Maybe both. Anyway, yeah. So it's been something that's always been around, but I feel like right now it's having a glow up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think, there's a list of supplements that are legit, that really do work, that are pretty harmless. And creatine has been on that in my book for years. So I think it's kind of always been on my radar, but you guys would be a better gauge of like, oh, we've been hearing about this recently. And I agree. I think seeing this crossover into the endurance space is definitely giving it a huge resurgence. Because if you think about it, like we've known for a very long time that creatine supplementation increases the storage form of creatine in our muscles. And there's an energy system called the creatine phosphate system that pulls from those stores to create really fast energy for up to 25 seconds. So it made sense for bodybuilders to use it, for sprinters to use it. A lot of swimmers used it, I guess they're out there for a little more than 25 seconds, but if you think they're using that extra energy at the end, like kind of a sprint finish, if you will. So it was huge in, and then baseball, right? Anything that was like a strength and a power sport, it was massive. But I mean, it never really crossed over into endurance because it was for that very short burst of energy, that creatine phosphate system. So, I was actually a little bit surprised at first when I saw it trickling into here, but we'll talk today about why it is.
I think it's coming into this space because of all these hybrid athletes. So you have these no, I'm serious. I'm not even kidding.
Legitimizing hybrid athlete.
Okay. Dudes who like working out, or ladies, and then are now becoming runners. So the crossover of the people that are used to taking creatine to the people that run is now, the line's getting blurry. And you look at brands like the Bear guy.
Bear.
Is it called Bear?
BPN, Bear Performance
BPN,
Nutrition.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a perfect fit for his audience. Like, that's a group of guys that they're trying to get muscles. They're trying to work out, be holistically, physically strong, and they also run. So it's like, I feel like it's just kind of bleeding over into the run space for those of us who are lighter worker outers like myself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it makes sense for athletes like that for sure. I think if you're doing some very heavy lifting or a lot of strength training and your goal is to get stronger and or to put on more muscle mass, we know very well that creatine can help with that. right? Like it can help us have stronger, faster movements for a shorter amount of time. So if we can move more weight while we're strength training, of course we're going to get stronger. We're going to have bigger muscles, so if those are some of the goals, absolutely, it's going to work. And to your point, I see a ton of people that are lifting pretty heavy, both male and female, that are also training for a marathon. So, in my book for the past 2 or 3 years, since this has been, kind of trickling into our world over here in the endurance space, I was like, sure, it makes perfect sense for, using Thomas's term hybrid, right? Which basically in my book means you're lifting pretty darn heavy plus training for an endurance race. That makes sense. But I think we're seeing it evolve even to people who are like, I'm actually not really strength training. And my goal is not to build muscle or get quote unquote stronger in the gym. Is this still an option for me? Is this still something I should be taking?
Okay. The other night I had a dream my muscles fell off my arms. Is that a result of taking creatine? Like, I
have a question. Like, where were your muscles in your dream? Were they like laying in your bed, or were they hanging on something? Or
they were just sliding off and disappearing.
Like
and
melting?
I was like, Meg, like they did, like imagine just something just sliding off your arm. And I just had these really skinny arms, and I'm like, Meg, I'm not strong anymore. And Meg's like, anymore.
So much of this, is
wow.
Like all these underlying thoughts coming out in your dreams. Thomas is worried about his strength and that Meg's going to ignore it. Sounds about right.
I have a general question about how this works, because I understand it helps like energy for 25 seconds, but like when someone goes to the gym, they're working out for like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes. Like I'm thinking about my brother who takes creatine, who's like a CrossFit dude. Like he's there for a long time, but you're telling me that this helps with like those bursts and then like the rest and then the bursts. Like how, like I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So it's not like you're exhausting these stores in one 25-second burst, right? Okay. We're just utilizing that energy for a short period of time before our other energy systems come in to play, right? The ones that need oxygen, the ones we use when we're running long distance, but there's still more creatine stores to have additional bursts of this energy. So like when you're lifting, right? It's not like that first lift that you're totally exhausting your creatine stores. Like you've got those in your muscles, kind of like our glycogen stores, right? We talk about like carb loading to increase the glycogen stores in our muscles. So the thought of taking creatine is to increase the amount of creatine that our muscles can actually store, because creatine comes from animals. So it's meat. There is some in like marine sources, fish, shrimp, things like that. But it would be really hard to eat enough creatine in meat. So you'd have to eat like a pound of meat to get 1 gram of creatine. Most people are taking like 5 grams of creatine a day. So just to put it in perspective, like if we really truly want to load our creatine stores, unlike carb loading where we can just eat a bunch of carbs, like it's probably not possible for most of us. Unless you're
saying
like a carnivore, but
shrimp salad, fried shrimp,
Bubba?
Yeah.
Right. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay, so then in theory, like if you have, I'm just trying to see how this would work for a runner. Like if I have a workout that is maybe 8 miles, but there's like, it's like a fartlek. So it's like 20, 30-second hard efforts in between. Is creatine potentially going to benefit me for that workout?
So that's what I'd like to see in a research study, honestly. Okay. Like if someone taking creatine could push their body harder in some of those more workout type track workout sessions that a lot of us rely on during a training cycle, especially in the beginning, would that help? Right. And I think that's just where the research is lacking right now. And hopefully we'll see more information on that. But, right now there is not solid research on specific half marathon, marathon performance and creatine supplementation. It's all just kind of like hypothetical, like it works for this. So we could translate that into, and that's not to say it's not doing something, right? For all these people taking it. It's just, we don't have research on it yet, which sometimes what we're doing is ahead of the research.
All right, I must be way ahead of the research here because I've been taking it in the morning probably for about a month now. Maybe longer, maybe 2 months. When I put in my scoop of collagen, I put in my scoop of creatine. It's a tiny little scoop. It's like not very big. And just been using it as a daily supplement. Now I do my runs I have been adding in, since my runs are kind of like I have to keep them real easy with the leg thing going on. I've been doing like a HIIT workout on the bike, and I've been doing weightlifting as well on the side. I don't know if you've seen some of my pictures lately. I look really good.
Your dreams would suggest otherwise.
Well, I'm not maintaining, let's just say. So am I wasting this supplement? Because it's not like if I'm going out for an easy 6 miles in zone 1 or 2, is there any benefit to having this stuff in my system?
So I think that's a great question. And, we're jumping ahead a little bit of like what, some of the research says. But when we think about how we need to quote unquote load creatine in our system, it is recommended that you're taking it on a daily basis to replenish what you're using and to build up those stores slowly. So no, I don't think just because you didn't lift hard for a couple days and we're taking it that it was wasted, not by any means. We're going to store that. And obviously we're utilizing some of that during those HIIT workouts, during the strength training. So you're just kind of replacing what you're using there. So no, I don't think you're wasting it.
So the timing of creatine is less important than...
That's undoctored, by the way.
Okay, Thomas is showing me photos of himself right now on his phone.
You're so vain. Oh, that's actually a good shot.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the self-timer.
Yeah. So Thomas mentioned collagen in his coffee with the creatine. We've talked about collagen a bunch on here and how that's important to time it before your workout. With creatine, are you saying that that's less concerning of when you take it, or should it be before a hard workout?
Yeah. So, before I really dug into the research this week, my impression was it doesn't necessarily matter very much on timing as far as creatine goes. Like, we're going to load it throughout the day. No big deal. Now, when I really dove into the research, it does show that our muscles, just like with carbs, right? There's a lot of similarities here. Our muscles can grab onto more carbs right after a workout, so we can replace our glycogen stores faster, and so the same is true for creatine. If we're really trying to load that creatine, if we take it with some carbs shortly after a workout, our muscles are a little spongier and are going to absorb it a little faster. But that said, we're still going to utilize it and be just fine no matter when we're taking it throughout the day. And a lot of people who take a higher dose of creatine, so some people will load with 20 grams over the day, but if we take more than 5 grams at a time, our stomach doesn't love it. So a lot of people who are loading will take it 4 random times throughout the day. So that's not around a workout most of the time, so it'll work no matter when you take it.
So is creatine a stepping stone to taking amino acids? Is that my next thing? Am I going to have to go to GNC?
I thought you were going to say steroids. That's why I started laughing.
I'm trying to get there. Nobody seems to want to help me out there.
Aw, poor Thomas.
Yeah.
I think, sure, a lot of people who are using something like creatine are probably also doing whey protein powder or BCAAs. That makes sense. It's kind of the same concept.
We do protein powders.
Yeah.
Especially after, today I had to go someplace really quickly, so I downed some of the protein powder and then took one of those Rise bars that you got me on.
You forgot that we had Fairlife in the fridge.
Fairlife.
Yeah.
I could have had a Fairlife.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Well, I was going to, as you brought it up, the people who sponsored the actual podcast or the blog that I wrote on creatine was Runway, who we talk about all the time. So they have a complete protein now that is protein powder plus the creatine. So
there's creatine in that?
Yeah. So obviously you take
crazy.
it after a workout. So you're getting your creatine, you're getting your protein powder. I also heard a lot of people telling me, you guys said Fairlife, they'll take a swig of their Fairlife and then put their creatine in it, shake it up and drink it. So just part of the recovery supplement. So
that would be the same formula.
Yeah. Right.
Basically.
Right. Same as the Runway's new protein with creatine.
Yeah. He's got my address the other day, so I think we're going to be trying that out as well.
Good. Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah. I tried both flavors finally. I had only tried one for a little while, but they have an acai and then they have a chocolate. So I just held up the chocolate. I personally like the chocolate better. The acai was really sweet and I don't like super sweet protein powders, but it tasted good.
I don't even know. If you had a table of ingredients and you said one of these is acai, I wouldn't know. I have no idea what acai tastes like.
It's like a berry. It's very berry-ish.
Yeah, but I'm
yeah.
Raspberry? I don't know.
You're
What
not
does
wrong.
it taste like? Pomegranate? I don't know.
All of those things combined.
That's interesting. I'm hoping that it dissolves well. Like I find that my issue with protein powders is some dissolve better than others.
So that was what I was playing with when I was trying both of these two, was like mixing it as they said, because this is also a vegan protein powder. So you guys know vegan protein powders often mix very thick and are very grainy. Like I never choose those over whey because I tolerate whey and it's just so much smoother, and to Thomas's point, dissolves well. So I mixed one of the flavors with almond milk and one with water just to kind of experiment. And I was actually very, very impressed how smooth it was for a vegan protein powder. Like very impressed.
Because I was going to say, I like way better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way
yeah.
better.
Way.
See what you did there.
But yeah.
But you're saying, but now we've always talked about that with the vegan protein.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's in a bag like that and it's a scoop and it's measured out, are we getting the same amount of protein as a scoop of whey protein? Like, is it formulated in a way that you're getting the full dose?
So what makes me laugh is you don't even know anything about this protein powder. You're like feeding right into like all the things that are beneficial about it. So it's actually, and we'll probably talk about this more in the future too, but the type of protein powder in it is fermented nutritional yeast protein. To my knowledge, this is the first protein brand that's using that. So of course I'm like looking into it more. And the cool thing about it is it's vegan, but it's high in leucine. So that's what we've talked about. Like most vegan protein powders are low in the amino acid leucine, which is what does the triggering for our muscles to recover. So that's why like pea protein is like not as superior as whey protein because of the leucine content. So this particular vegan protein powder is actually really high in leucine because of the type of vegan protein they're using. So I think they're onto something. It's very avant-garde if you ask me. Like there's no other product like this on the market right now. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Cheribundi is at it again with a brand new product to make it even easier for us to benefit from tart cherries at home and on the go. You can now find all the benefits of tart cherries in gummy form. Each gummy is equivalent to 12 and a half tart cherries. Taking just 2 to 4 gummies per day will give you the powerful antioxidants that have shown to reduce muscle soreness and lead to greater recovery. Tart cherry gummies are available now at cheribundi.com or Amazon. Use code FUEL for 20% off your purchase.
Okay, let's go back to creatine here. So talk to us about the general benefits. Like why would someone want to take creatine in the first place?
Yeah. So Thomas is flexing. He wants to build some muscles. So that's obviously one of the things which we talked about. But specifically to like what potential benefits does creatine have that would benefit us as endurance runners, right? That's kind of the rabbit hole I was like throwing myself down this week. So one of the ones that's out there that's very well known is creatine can help us improve recovery. So a lot of people are taking it not necessarily for the strength or gaining muscle mass, but to improve recovery. So, looking through the research, it is pretty solid. Creatine is an antioxidant. It has anti-inflammatory effects. So we've talked a lot about that here with tart cherry juice and omega-3 and eating more fruits and vegetables, things to help our body recover faster from like that antioxidant, anti-inflammatory standpoint. So if we can recover faster, can we push harder in training, is obviously, the thought there that maybe how the recovery piece from creatine could help then with, endurance running. Another one that is intriguing is there is a huge interplay between creatine and carbs. So like we were saying, if we have carbs with the creatine, we're going to absorb those and stock those faster in our muscles. So there's also some interplay between creatine and glycogen storage. So what they're finding is that we can actually increase our glycogen storage with more creatine in our muscles. So if we are loaded with creatine and then we're carb loading, they're saying that we might actually have a even greater benefit from the carb load, than if creatine was not around. My only caveat to that as I was digging into it is it sounds like we need to be doing like the high dose creatine for this to happen. Maybe not just the 3 grams per day maintenance dose. I'm not sure that would necessarily augment glycogen stores. But at the end of the day, if we are carb loading, like we've talked about around here, we're going to maximize our glycogen stores, whether there's creatine there or not, right? But it is kind of intriguing that there is that interplay between, creatine and carbs. Another thing was it might improve the efficiency of our muscles. So some of the research that I was diving into was looking at, like, remember when we went to get tested, Meg, I don't think you were there, but they were putting different shoes on us and checking how much oxygen we were consuming depending on the shoes we were wearing.
Meg did it.
That's
a
right.
different
The
time.
next
You didn't
year.
make it the second time.
Your
Yeah.
airplane
right.
got rerouted,
Stuck
which I know
in
you
Philly.
blame me for Paris. I apologize if I had
don't blame
anything
you.
to do with that. But yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, who listens to this show, do not travel with feathers.
So rude.
I mean, no. I mean, once you get someplace, you're great once you're there. But don't actually take the train or the plane that she's getting on.
You're at a 50% increased odds of something going wrong. You're with me for sure.
I think we should start like a tally.
Yeah.
Because maybe it could
bad.
be just in our heads. But it does seem like
I've had
get the-
1, 2, 3, 4 pretty big catastrophes
Yeah.
with traveling. 4 in 2 years. I think that's a lot more than most people have. So,
all right. So to get it back to creatine here, it sounds like what you're telling me is general health of the muscles is what we're looking at for the most part. It seems like it's something that you can add that's going to increase glycose storage. That's going to glycogen. What did I
glucose.
say?
You kind of like threw it all together.
Yeah.
That's my breeze.
The abreve.
Wait, but you're saying you were talking about when we were at the
Oxygen
research lab and New Balance and the oxygen. Like, so what are you suggesting that this makes it easier?
So there is some research to show, like, just like when I wore one pair of shoes, I didn't use as much oxygen at the same paces. They're showing that with creatine stores in our muscles, that our muscles are a little more efficient so that they can utilize less oxygen. So those paces feel easier. So one of the specific studies that was looking at slightly more endurance stuff, right? I think it was like 30 minutes of running, it found that we could reduce our oxygen consumption at those paces by 4%. So we could run a little longer, a little harder. So that is intriguing for us as endurance runners, that if creatine can help with that muscle efficiency, it can help us use less oxygen at certain paces. Now, how does that extrapolate to a full marathon? That's where we, need more research within there. But that's obviously another potential benefit of taking creatine for us in our discipline. And then 2, which we'll talk about because we have a bunch of questions from people. A lot of people don't want to take creatine because they said it makes them feel puffy. It makes them retain water. The scale goes up because just like with glycogen, we're hanging on to extra water in our muscles when we're loading it with creatine, which bodybuilders like, right? Because then their muscles look bigger, look more pumped, more swole, if you will. What do you think, Thomas? Totally?
Swole.
He's just flexing.
I'm very swole.
So with holding on to that extra hydration, could that help us? Is it like almost a hyperhydration effect, like we talk about a lot, on a hotter day? So there were some studies that looked at people who were completely loaded with creatine. So they had taken that 20-gram dose for 5 to 7 days, and they found that it did have a hyperhydration-like effect and allowed them to have more efficient thermoregulation when they were exercising for longer in the heat. So, I mean, all of this sounds
That's
like
good news.
Interesting. The only thing, again, about that is it was that high dose. And a lot of runners are not taking that high dose. They're taking more of a maintenance dose. So, does it still have that effect? I don't know.
Well, you could do it as part of your carb load, but can I ask her a question to clarify something real quick? Yeah. So, you're saying that it's something that you build up in your system. So this wouldn't be something that necessarily like the next Morton could have creatine as an ingredient that would actually benefit you as you took the gel on the course. You need to be on a regimen almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I can't imagine how it would work immediately like that out there, like caffeine would, right? Yeah, very different.
But so we've talked about how taking like tart cherry juice and sort of like race week, like before the race, and to build that up. Is that how creatine works? Like, can you do it the week before, or should you be doing this like months before?
And I think that's another great question. I could see it might potentially help just doing it the week before. But the other thing is, and we'll get into some of the side effects, like, do we really want to be doing that and taking a risk if we've never tried it, before our race?
Wait, there's side effects?
Everything has side effects, Dee.
Okay, so let's talk about them. What are the potential side effects and things we should think about before we all just go buy creatine and start taking a ton of it every day?
Is dreams where your muscles fall off your arm a side effect?
I think that's like something you're chewing on before bed. I don't know.
Okay.
So the first one that you hear a lot is, especially we heard it with women for a long time, is quote unquote weight gain. So when we're talking about weight gain, yes, you might see a difference on the scale. It's completely water weight. Or if you're taking it longer, maybe it's even
bigger
lean
muscles.
muscle mass. Right. Like we're putting on lean muscle mass. But a lot of people who are very weight centric don't like to see those changes. I also have had some people try it that I'm like, just don't get on the scale for a few weeks. Like, please just don't, right? Because if that's going to bother you, like, let's really evaluate whether you feel like this is working and helping your training for a few weeks.
That's good to know.
The water
I haven't
retention.
been on a scale since I've been taking it.
Right. So when we really look at it, some people can gain up to 2 to 4 pounds of water weight within the first week if they're taking that higher dose. Now, it's more of a side effect if we're taking that 20-gram dose a day, but most people are taking 3 to 5 grams a day in the endurance space. There's less chance of the side effect of fluid retention and weight gain if we're taking that lower dose. So to kind of, sideline that concern for a lot of people. And then two, it's just water, right? It's just hydration. So it's not like we're putting on fat mass, right? It's just a little more water in there. The other thing is some people will get GI issues from taking it. And again, that relates back to how much we're taking. So the lower dose, obviously less of a risk. We did have a question about that. So I found a study, which I thought was very interesting, and it was comparing a group that took 10 grams of creatine at once versus another group that took 5 2 different times during the day. And the people that took 10 grams all at once, 56% of them had diarrhea from it. That's pretty high incidence. But we know that the 5-gram dose, it was much lower, and it was the same as the placebo dose, right? So like if we're getting GI issues, we just need to evaluate, like, are we taking too much at once?
So how much of this have I been taking? So I've been doing like 5 grams.
That's pretty typical.
5 grams a day of the gainful creatine here.
Yeah.
And you're saying that's, if I want, like during race week, maybe double it up, but maybe not all at once.
People get diarrhea from 10 grams. I don't think doubling up's the answer.
I don't mind.
I don't mind. You will mind on race day.
Yeah.
But if I toilet again. Okay. So some of the other potential side effects, well, I guess it's not really a side effect, is there's individual response variation to this. Some people don't notice any difference or benefit to creatine. Some people do. So they have done research on.
What would be things you're noticing?
Why? Well, increased strength, right? Better recovery, all the jazz, right, that we have been talking about to improve it. So what they're finding is, as far as like genetics go, some of us, we have different fast twitch, slow twitch fibers, right? That's why some people are sprinters and some people are marathon runners. So what they're finding is our genetic variation in our muscles actually is going to help dictate whether this works or not. So if you tried it and you're like, I don't notice a difference, then maybe you're not a responder to it, So that is something to keep in mind too. And then obviously vegans and vegetarians are probably not getting a whole lot of creatine. So there is kind of a heightened interest in, would it be more important for people like that are not eating animal products? Do they need to supplement with something like creatine?
But wouldn't that be eating animal product?
They have vegan sources of creatine. Yeah. Yeah. So,
as someone who I'm 99% sure doesn't have any fast twitch fibers in her body at all, this is probably just a pass for me, right?
That is not true. My hand gets slapped away so fast. You should see how fast her fast twitch muscles are.
I love it. I love it.
I'm going for a hug. No.
I would have to look. I need to read the research study again to remember who benefited from it, like which type of fibers. Because honestly, off the top of my head, I can't remember who is benefiting more or less from it. But yeah, I mean, it's a good, like, I still haven't decided if it's something I want to take. Like, obviously, I've been, trying this protein powder. I don't lift much, like some of the things that I feel like I recommend other people to take it for, I'm like, that profile doesn't always fit me. It should fit me. So maybe in the off season, I'll try it and add more strength in, add more, speed works, things like that, and see if I notice it. I'm just very much a creature of habit, and I'm not doing it right now, and things are going well in my training cycle. So I'm probably not going to rock the boat. But, I think we're all looking for that next thing that might help us, especially as we're getting older. With recovery, there's certainly potential here that it could be something that would help us.
So this isn't something, because when this comes out, it's going to be September, and people are going to be getting ready to race probably in a couple weeks. This is not something we want to gamble with a couple.
Nothing new on race day.
I wouldn't. I'm also not a gambler. I might put a quarter in on a slot, but I'm not sitting down at the tables. So I'm not the gambling kind.
I've changed my mind on that. I like a lottery ticket and I like blackjack.
So that's why you're taking creatine. He's the gambler.
Yeah, you gotta keep Megan.
I'll play all the games.
You gotta keep her out of the. We could go lose the company.
I was just gonna say, she's like, "What's money? Huh? We don't need it."
Vegas trip.
We can rebuild.
I love it.
Okay, so you put this out on Instagram that we were going to be talking about creatine, and I know you got a lot of questions.
Slot?
I thought you were going to say a slot ton.
A schload of questions?
You got a lot of questions.
Yes, there were a lot.
So let's just do some quick ones here. Okay. Savvy Girl Runs? Yeah. Said, I know the recommended dose is 3 to 5 grams. Why the range? Is 3 grams enough for a lighter female?
So if we're stocking this in our muscles, the more muscle mass we have, technically the more creatine we would need, right? Was where my thought went. And I was like, I better look this up. So there is also ways to do this based on how much we weigh versus like a generic number. So I pulled that. So if we're loading, like that bigger loading dose, it's 0.3 grams of creatine per kilogram of body weight. And if it's a maintenance dose, it's 0.03 grams per kilogram. So I know that doesn't mean much to people. So for a 100-pound person, since she said she's a smaller human, that would only be like 1.4 grams per day. So like significantly less than some of these things. So that is kind of intriguing. Like if you are, a smaller human or a larger human, like, do you need to adjust this 3 to 5 grams per day? And the answer might be maybe. Yeah.
What age, Jen, this is from Jen. What age should you start taking it?
So the American Academy of Pediatrics says don't do it before 18. Now, I've listened to plenty of webinars of parents of teenage athletes wanting to give creatine, and is it safe? Technically, it is safe for short periods of time for people under 18. They recommend like keeping it to 6 months. But the biggest thing is, we talked about this in the last episode. We know what teens' diets look like. Do not throw creatine at a kid if their diet stinks, right? Let's play with nutrition first and then talk to their doctor, make sure they also support it. Get some just baseline labs to make sure everything looks okay if you do want to start something like that. But, for me, in my house, it won't be till over 18.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Carrie said, we kind of touched on this earlier, but what's the best time to take it, before or after a run?
Yeah. So if we really want to optimize it after the run, which like we talked about with the new runway product, it's combined with your protein. So it's easy to just do that then. Like Thomas was talking about, is before wrong? Absolutely not. Like if that's when you want to take it, I think that works too.
Okay, this is from Courtney, and she said, who would benefit from it? Difference between whey. We also kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about like who would benefit, but I did want to address the whey protein question. So creatine is an energy source that's stored in our muscles. Whey protein is a building block that repairs our muscles. So they're two very, very different things.
Whey is very important to take after your run, and that's when you would also potentially just add the creatine if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jess said, I have been loving the results of adding it. I have been asked if you need to load before. What does that mean?
She means like take
That
it
maintenance,
and build it up in
yeah.
your system.
That like 20-gram dose for like 5 to 7 days versus just taking the 3 to 5 grams. So again, we need more research, but I don't necessarily think that as endurance athletes, we need to do the load phase.
K Diddy 27 said, heard it absorbs better with carbs. What if I don't eat right away?
So you're right. We talked about that. It's synergistic. They work beautifully together. So I would say let's try to eat with it a little sooner. It'll help with recovery too.
Okay. M asked, and we talked about this too. Water retention, weight gain. What's the deal?
So yes, we're probably going to retain some fluid if we start taking creatine. The more we take, the more that side effect is apparent. But like we mentioned before, if we're not doing the loading dose, we're probably not going to notice any big swings. But like I mentioned, just stay off the scale if it's something you want to try. It's just water, right? It's only going to help us on these hot, summer runs.
Okay. Jacqueline asked, is creatine bad for the kidneys?
So this was a myth that was like running around out there 20, 30 years ago. Like, is this safe? Are we sure this is safe? So they did a ton of research on creatine to make sure that it's safe. And as long as we're staying well hydrated, it is absolutely safe. We do need to drink an extra like 20 to 24 ounces of water a day when we're taking creatine. Similar to when we carb load, right? We need more fluid because we're storing that in our muscles. Some people say if you have something going on with your kidneys, you shouldn't take creatine. I was also involved in grad school in a research project that gave creatine to people that had chronic kidney disease because it is an essential nutrient in there. So there's a lot of nuance in creatine and kidney function and all that kind of stuff. So if you're concerned, that's where you consult with your doctor, get some baseline labs, get some labs once you're taking it, just make sure everything's okay, but it should be.
This is my question off of this list really fast so creatine is a supplement, so it's not regulated and it falls into the category of there could be a ton of trash creatines out there, right? So we're still looking for the same certifications and
Correct.
as anything else. Okay.
NSF, Informed for Sport. Yep.
Okay. Mari said, can it cause stomach upset even if starting with a low dose? If so, tips to manage.
Yeah. So that's where I pulled that research study we just talked about, that the higher the dose, the more likelihood we may have diarrhea. So keep it separated. If you do want to do a loading dose, separate it into like 2 to 4 5-gram doses throughout the day. And because what they're finding is they think it's the side effects is just because we have too much creatine in our GI tract that we can't figure out what to do with. So it's like that excess that's like fermented and causing issues. So if we just keep that dose a little lower, it should be okay.
Is this from Matt? Featherston 1?
Who's Featherston 1?
Matt asked, is there any data linking it to decrease in cognitive decline? Some of us are vintage.
He's vintage like you, Thomas. Mm-hmm. His face. So there is a lot of interest in this too. Like some people are taking it because we do store creatine in our brains. So when we look at can creatine supplementation like promote or influence our brain's creation of energy, right? I mean, our brain uses a ton of energy all day long. So yes, there is some research to show, especially women have lower creatine storage in their brain. So the thought is like, if we can increase that amount of creatine, do we have better energy given to our brain specifically, right? Because all that energy is going to stay in there. And there is some really interesting research on like depression and anxiety and cognitive function and sleep related to creatine supplementation. So I wanted to mention this because I have heard a lot of people that's the reason they want to take it is the mental piece. It's not necessarily anything else that we talked about. So, I do think, again, that research is a little newer, but it's plausible that it could help, with cognitive function, cognitive decline, all that kind of stuff.
So your words, not mine. Women have smaller brains.
Smaller creatine stores in their brains.
Okay.
Not brain volume.
Okay.
Okay, our final question from Elizabeth. She said, creatine needs/benefits for women.
So there's
Increase
a ton.
the size of your brain.
There you go. Out there with like perimenopausal women. I think a lot of this is coming from Stacey Sims. I listened to her on the Huberman podcast recently because so many people wanted me to. And she is very keen on 3 grams of creatine every day for every female over the age of 40.
wow.
Like very strong, right? Her recommendations are often very black and white. So I think that's where a lot of these questions are coming from as far as like, do women need to supplement with creatine? So there is a lot of research in supplementing, in our younger years as females, and then also in the perimenopausal and then postmenopausal time frames. And what they found is we know our hormones decrease, right? As we're going through perimenopause, postmenopausal, specifically estrogen. That means we lose muscle mass and we can lose bone density. So there's a lot of interest in, if we supplement with creatine, can that help us not lose so much muscle mass when our hormones start to tank? And then also, can it help protect bones? Which I thought it was really interesting. This study was so well done. It looked at all that supplementation if you are exercising versus if you're not. So if we're taking creatine but doing nothing to help with our muscle mass, aka weightlifting, it's not going to help, right? Creatine is not magical. It's the creatine plus strength training that has been shown to help fight that, age-related muscle loss and decrease in bone density. So it's throwing creatine at the situation because our hormones are tanking is not going to help with body composition. We need to also be doing the strength training with it. And that's why I thought it was great to do such a deep dive into this. This supplement, creatine, has been around for a very long time. There's probably more research on creatine than any supplement on the market, honestly.
Wow.
So like we said, we know it's safe. We know it can benefit certain types of people. Like I said, I think there's a potential that it could help us as endurance athletes. I haven't run out and immediately started taking it, just for perspective. Not that that needs to influence what anyone is doing.
I've been taking it.
I do. Right. I do think a lot of it has to do with what your goals are, right? I want to run a fast marathon. Could creatine help me in the future? Sure. I'll give it a whirl. Right. But I'm not lifting. I'm not doing strength, power, all that kind of stuff. So that's been kind of my thought process here. But looking at all this research, it's kind of changed my tune of thought a little bit, that maybe there would be some benefits for a lot of us to use it. But again, just like anything, just like collagen and tart cherry, it's your choice if that's something that you think would benefit you once you've educated yourself on what it could potentially help with. And then it's up to you to decide if you want to try something.
Are you ready to end it? Not yet. Don't say peas and carrots.
All right.
Okay. Thanks everyone for listening. If you have a question that we have not answered, you can send us an email at fuelforthesoulpodcast@gmail.com and we will answer it here on the show.
Now?
Now.
Peas, cares, and creatine.
Oh, he's breathing. I was like, I don't get it. I got it now.
Or just peas and carrots, plus a little creatine sprinkled over top. Maybe 5 milligrams twice a day.
Twice a day.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
10 milligrams, but I won't get diarrhea.
He's listening. Bye.
Or will I?
Bye.
I'll just wear a diaper. Hello, Berlin.
Vegas trip.
We can rebuild. We can rebuild. You could schlode.
It's got cat's claw.
Or what is that?
Is that what it
is? That actual cat's claws?
I-
So the takeaway is that women's tiny brains need creatine. Oat straw.
So you know it's good.
We got stick figure over here and tiny brain.
Here we go.
Oh, jeez.
I'm hoping that gets cut out.
Oh, really?
Intimate. Like the show.
Okay,
I'm talking about
we
the
have
show.
to stop.